Talk Africa.
Hello and welcome to Talk Africa with me, Jones. Well, always a pleasure to come your way. Now, here's what's coming up on today's show. The Auditor General's report in Ghana has indicated that there was some sort of misappropriation or mismanagement to do with the COVID-19 funds. We have a report on that, and we also hear the views of Ghanaians. But we begin the show, as we've been doing, leading up to the Nigerian 2023 elections. Come the 25th of February, Nigerians will go to the polls to elect a new president. Now, it's important we talk about Nigeria. And every time we have the show, I mention this simply because Nigeria is a powerhouse economically, across the continent of Africa, and also the most populous nation. So whatever happens in Nigeria has a significant impact in across the continent entirely. Now, today's guest, he calls himself a convert to the obedient group. And I'm glad to have him here. He's a politician, a chartered accountant, and also former Anambra Governor Candidate 2021. He goes by the name of Mr. Ben Etiaba. Ben, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Good evening, Jones. Good evening, viewers. I'm delighted to be in your studios this evening.
Fantastic. Now, as always, we do encourage you to get involved in the discussion we're having here today. If you're watching, make sure you send in your thoughts, your views. Okay, if you have any questions in particular for Ben here, we'll be more than happy to put it to him and he can give you his answers. Now, it's interesting because we've had both representatives of the APC and PDP on here, and finally it's good to have you as well. Now, prior to this show coming on air, you gave your reason as to why you think Peter Obi is the perfect candidate for Nigeria come this 2023 elections.
Right, that's easy to see, to understand, and I'll tell you very simply what these reasons are. If you're in a hole, the only way to come out of that hole is to stop digging, okay? And if you keep doing the same thing the same way all the time, the result will still be the same. We're in a mess. We're in a terrible mess. We need to move in a different direction. We need a breath of fresh air. We need a leader with the right worldview. We need a leader who understands what the problems are, understands the solutions, but above all, has the political will, the courage to drive through the right change we need. Okay, most Nigerians know what the problems are. They know what the solutions are.
Yes.
But when they get in there, they seem to be handicapped. And you can understand why. Because they're already beholden to special interest before they get into power. So you need a maverick. You need almost an independent candidate. But in Nigeria, you must be sponsored by a political party. But above all, you need a candidate who is free from all the very tough godfathers we have, feeding off the system.
It's interesting you mentioned the tough godfathers that we have. And I just want to just take your brains here a little bit more to do with elections in Nigeria. Since independence, Nigeria has been through, it's not just peculiar to Nigeria. We've seen what's happening in other countries as well. And since 1999, since Nigeria decided to go through the democratic process till now, what do you think has changed?
Since independence?
From independence to 1999.
Oh, we were ill prepared for independence. We were not ready for that. I think it came a bit too soon. And we had a crop of leaders who at the time were selfless, at least more selfless than we have now. But hey, the same problem we're experiencing now started then, but albeit in a minuscule way. We had the elections of 1960 that gave birth to to independence, a new nation. Everybody was jubilant. I wasn't there. I wasn't born at the time, but of course I read and I heard from my parents and the books I read and research that I did. In 1963, Nigeria became a republic. But we couldn't manage our affairs, and barely 3 years after that, we had the crisis, we had the coup. and that led to sort of the military interruption. And Gowon led Nigeria through the Civil War, and we were, on the other side. Eventually, in 1970, it was a no victor, no vanquished, and the Nigerians expected an election to usher in a new democratically elected government. Gowon promised that. By 1976, I believe, Nigerians felt this wasn't going to come. There was a coup. Murtala Mohammed took over, and eventually was killed. Obasanjo came first time and handed over in 1979. But if you'll permit me to say this, in 1979, just barely 9 years after that Civil War, the end of the Civil War, you had an Igbo man from the southeast. You may understand the different tribes in Nigeria, Anambra who ran under the banner of NPP in that election as the presidential candidate. That's not the story I want to tell you. The story is that we had 4 other parties. I believe the PRP, Aminu Kanu, chose an Igbo person, Dr. B. Nzeribe, as his, Ejikoku, as his deputy. The GNPP, Waziri Ibrahim, chose an Igbo person as his vice. Then Shagari chose Alex Ekweme. So you had 4 parties, major parties. And, we got it wrong again. The military struck until after the Babangida experiment here in 1999, we started again. So since 99, we're getting it increasingly better. So I'm extremely hopeful that this time around we'll have the best election. The president says he's prepared for a free and fair election. I honestly believe him, and that would be a great legacy to leave Nigeria with as he departs.
I asked you that question simply because I just want you to touch on the impact or how much ethnicity plays a role in Nigeria as a whole and going to election.
Not just in Nigeria, everywhere in Africa.
Yes. But we're focusing on Nigeria.
Yes. You tend to find that people will say, let us support this guy, even if he's not good, he's one of us. And then when this person gets into offices, into the office and messes it up for everyone else, they are affected as well. So, I will not support somebody because he's from my tribe, because if he goes wrong, I'll be affected too. It's unfortunate that this has happened over the years, but I think for the first time, especially since 1999, this republic, we're seeing a candidate that all Nigerians from every zone clamoring for, yearning for. And the reason is because we are in at the deep end. We've had it up to here. It has built up to a crescendo for so many years. So now we're looking for somebody who will come in and help. Okay, so nobody cares anymore. At least majority of Nigerians, from what I can see, are no longer bothered about which tribe the Mr. Peter Obi, for instance, we're talking about here, Labour Party, is from. They want him because they see him as a man of integrity, somebody who's free from corruption or corrupt practices. He's had a long track record of being in public glare in Nigeria, governor of a state, and the best state at the time in Nigeria, and post-governorship, no crisis, no investigations. He's been going around educating our people. Now it's payback time. Now the people know him, they connect with him, and they see him as the man who should occupy that position next to save Nigeria.
What do you think makes him different to the likes of Tinubu or Atiku?
Okay, I think I'd like rather not to mention names, but you've asked a question, so you're drawing me into that. So let me just say this. For a start, he's younger. Okay, this is not something that should be a retirement home.
Is age an issue, you think?
It can be an issue in an underdeveloped democracy like Nigeria. If you have a country where systems are in place, checks and balances, things work, it just doesn't matter if Biden is 80 years old, if Trump is 79, it just doesn't matter. But we're still building we're still collecting and putting together the building blocks of democracy and building our infrastructure for democratization of a large nation like Nigeria. So you need somebody who's prepared to work 36 hours a day, not even 24 hours. Somebody who's prepared to work round the clock, not somebody who'll be sleeping on duty.
Well, one might argue that we've had Buhari. He was old, but he was still able to attain power in Nigeria.
Okay, you're trying to draw me into criticizing Buhari here.
No,
Let me tell you what I feel.
Yes.
Let me tell you what I feel about Buhari.
Yes.
The way he has performed in Nigeria, it's in the public domain. It's out there for anybody to make their assessment. I'm not here to give a judgment one way or the other. But I did mention him earlier, and what I did say is that if he is able to give us a credible election, whatever he has done or not done in the last 8 years will be forgotten and forgiven. So we want a clean legacy, a great legacy of giving us a credible election, because if we don't have a good election, we're going to have a post-election crisis, and we don't want that.
I'm going to come to that, the process, going to the ballots and casting your votes. But just watching some of your clips and also watching Peter Obi, there seems to be this way of not actually talking about the opposition. And I just wanted to know if that is actually a good tactics, because at the end of the day, it's politics at the end of the day.
Okay, let me tell you this. If you want to connect with the people, if you want the people to listen to you, don't go around blackmailing your opponents. Run a clean campaign based on issues, strictly issues-based campaign. That's what Peter Obi...
What is wrong with calling out the inadequacies of, leaders or the lack thereof? What's wrong with that?
No, there is nothing wrong with that. All I'm saying is that there's a better way of doing it. Saying things as they are, but not dwelling on that. Saying what you will do differently to make things work for better for Nigerians. That's what they want to hear. They don't want to hear name calling. They want to know that the economy will get better, there will be jobs, that security will improve, insecurity will be a thing of the past. That's what they want to do. That, medical tourism will come to an end. People will stop this phenomenon. I don't know if you know about Japa in Nigeria, where Nigerians are living in droves. That's what they want to hear. They don't want any name calling. We will have enough of that. Let others do that. We are here, Labour Party, Mr. Peter Obi, to talk positively to Nigerians, sell the ticket and sell the vision to Nigerians.
You made mention that if Buhari leaves a good legacy where there will be free and fair election, everything he did or did not do may be forgotten of. And also, listening to one of your clips, you vehemently believe that this year election, the process, is one of the strongest, if not the strongest. Why do you have so much faith? And what's different about this particular election compared to the others?
Okay, it has been building up to this election, I have to tell you. 2011, PDP won President Jonathan. Nobody believed in 2015 an opposition party could win a presidential election in Nigeria because of power of incumbency. But things have changed somewhat, so much more since 2015. You now have the new Electoral Act, okay, which means that the process is now going to be... Election is not a one-day affair. It's not the voting. There's a build-up to it. It's not just on the 25th of February, okay? And I have been watching every process to date. INEC, the electoral body in Nigeria, they are living up to their billing. They say what they will do, and they do it. And I experienced INEC in my own election in Anambra. So I believe that the chairman of INEC is a credible guy, Professor Mahmoud. But above all, you now have a game changer known as BVAS. That's the accreditation and transmission of results machine. So you don't have all that collation where people will vote and then they'll go and begin to balkanize the results and change it. No, it cannot work now the same way as it has always worked in the past. What happens now, and is going to happen in this next election, is that accreditation and voting will happen at the same time, because before there will be accreditation, then there will be gap before voting. So what the parties with so-called structures will do is that they work out the number of people accredited, and then they will write the results to tally with that number. It's not going to happen again, because as you are doing your accreditation, you're voting, the result is being announced and transmitted. That's the game changer.
Okay. I watched one of your clips, and I think a man pointed out, asked a question which I thought was fantastic. Simply because he said Peter Obi coming to the Chatham House, he had the opportunity to address certain issues which he did not. And again, which kind of draws me back to the way he's trying to, portray himself. There's nothing wrong with that. But here we are, is not speaking to the the international community that's going to win you the results. It's going to get you into the highest office of the land. It's what happens in Nigeria.
Of course.
And the way politics is run in Nigeria, not to say that it is wrong, but every country, every nation has the way it runs its politics. And Peter Obi just seems to be a bit more different.
Completely different. But I'll make a comment about Chatham House and coming out in diaspora to speak to Nigerians in diaspora. It is Nigerians at home that will vote. We don't have diaspora voting at the moment, okay? But you see, we live in a global village now. The world is so globalized now that whatever happens anywhere in the world, I'm speaking to you from your studios in London,
yes,
is being watched live in Nigeria, okay? So people are listening to me. Minds are being made up, okay? Opinions are changing. The moment Peter Obi came and performed in such a way, superlative way, that people now saw him as a potential president in waiting, somebody with the gravitas to be president of Nigeria, it trickled over to Nigeria, and voters and the electorate started embracing him more. If only you witnessed what happened when he went back to Nigeria, the frenzy, okay? He's being mobbed anywhere he goes now, as if he's a pop star. In Kaduna, in Kanu, in Benue, in Niger. So, coming out to speak in England, in London, at Chatham House, had a very massive effect on the voters in Nigeria. People see these things. We're not backward, 40%, 38.3, if I'm quite right, of Nigerians now have Android phones and are on social media. I'm not talking about those who have access to phones, telephones. I'm talking about access to smartphones, okay? That's a huge number. When you think for 38%, okay? When you think that we have over 200 million Nigerians, you begin to look at the numbers. And when you also know that historically, 18 million, 15 million votes in the past will elect a president, Peter Obi is strong in this election. People are not looking at him, but we know the private polling results we're getting and what is showing us. We're quietly confident.
Okay, let's talk a bit more about the substantive issues here. Now, the number one issue facing Nigeria right now is the insecurity.
Oh, yes.
And, reading reports coming to do this interview here, there's a lot of money that has been pushed towards the defense and to try and tackle this phenomenon. Unfortunately, they've not been able to sort out this issue. So clearly, the problem is not about money. We've heard so much about Peter Obi saying he will sort out the security issues, but the details is what is missing. And this is what people are asking. What could he possibly do different to what has been done before?
Okay, now you talk about the amount of money being spent in that sector. And I'm sure you must have guessed that most of those funds find their way into the wrong pockets, okay, to put it mildly. When you have a president who is not corrupt, a first lady, his wife, who is not corrupt, a vice president who is not corrupt, people around them who are not corrupt, definitely corruption will come down by at least 50%. That's the starting point. When people note and know that this president is not corrupt and will not brook corruption, and one or two examples are set, corruption will come down even further, okay? Until we begin to allocate funds to the right sector and those funds get there to work in the sector they've been allocated to, it will be the same thing. What is he going to do differently? He's coming in to make sure that this cycle of corruption is broken, okay? It is completely shattered. Somebody will say, if it's not broken, why fix it? It is broken, so it must be fixed. And this is part of why Nigerians want a breath of fresh air in the Labour Party candidate, Mr. Peter Obi. And dare I say, in Dati, Baba Ahmed, his vice presidential candidate too, a man who refused to buy a property that was offered legitimately to him as a senator. But it was a federal government property. He refused. Others bought. He had the money to buy it, but he said no. So we have in both of them shining examples of the new Nigeria.
But I want practical steps here I'm talking about to do with the insecurity.
Practical steps are very straightforward. Every president has access to security reports. Real time, up to date, by the minute, okay? Security reports will tell you precisely what is going wrong. And until you know what is going wrong, you cannot fix it. So long as you're able to identify the problem, you can fix it. You are going to adopt both kinetic and non-kinetic approaches to fixing security in Nigeria. Okay? You're going to adopt both the carrot and the stick. And I also tell you this. Most of these issues of insecurity you're seeing comes as a result of failure of leadership. If people are hungry, people are angry, people are frustrated, people are tired, they don't know where the next meal is coming from, they are going to resort to mayhem. That's what you're seeing. Once the right things are beginning to happen in Nigeria and people are seeing a sense of direction in the way government is being run, and there is hope. What keeps you and I going is hope that tomorrow will be better than today. And they begin to feel that tomorrow will be better than today. Believe me, things will begin to quieten down.
Okay. Well, we'll keep the conversation going. We're talking about the upcoming general elections in Nigeria, 2023, February 25th. Okay. It's going to be interesting. If you're watching us, make sure you send in your comments, okay, so I can put your comments to Ben sitting here with us talking about this. Today we're talking about the Labour Party, the leader, Peter Obi. Are you an obedient or not? Let's hear your take on what we're discussing here. So many things have been said about him. There's a lot of issues in Nigeria, and Nigerians want answers to it. What do you want to hear? What do you want to see? What Nigeria do you want to see? We're talking about the insecurity in Nigeria. And the moment you mention insecurity, I think what comes to mind? Boko Haram, kidnapping, bandits in Nigeria. And to resolve this phenomenon, some have argued that it's actually good to try to speak to Boko Haram. It's actually good to try and speak to these criminals, to try to find a way to reintegrate them back to society. And I wonder if this is an approach that Peter Obi might want to also pursue.
I can assure you that he's going to be speaking with these groups, okay? And that was what I meant by saying carrot and stick approach. If you really recall what happened in Nigeria in 2007 when the late great President Umar Musa Yar'Adua came into office after Obasanjo, we had a major problem in the Niger Delta, and he chose to dialogue with the militants, and the result was very apparent. Okay, so sometimes it will take dialogue to resolve some of these issues, but where and when dialogue fails, then you go in heavy.
When it fails, you go in heavy.
Definitely.
And that's the approach you'll be taking.
I'm not going to be elected president. I'm telling you what I will do,
okay.
But it's not down to me or what I will advise. So let me not put words into the incoming president by his grace. Force him to say, sort of, I can't even do that. So.
Let's talk about agitation as well. We've seen in recent times, the movements, the indigenous, IPOB of the Biafrans, who feel they've been segregated. And this is an issue that keeps coming up all the time in Nigeria, and you see them calling for the international community to intervene, to bring about some solution. And should he be appointed to the highest office of the land, this is something that he also has to tackle.
Yes, but I'm not separating IPOB from other agitations. You have, we've talked about the Niger Delta one, we have a Southwest one, we have agitations elsewhere in Nigeria, in other regions in Nigeria. So it will be the same approach. There won't be any selective sort of treatment. Nobody will be a sacred cow, and nobody will have a special treatment. So, but with the IPOB one, and like you said, it will still be a case of finding out what the issues are, and these issues are glaring. Yes, exactly. These issues are glaring. Addressing them. It might be as simple as that to deal with it. So I'm not too, panicked about the IPOB or indeed any group. And also, we have a major problem, not in the southeast now, with kidnapping with the bandits, unknown gunmen. That IPOB thing has been hijacked for political reasons, okay? You hear all manner of things being said, suggested, that a breakaway faction or a different group now operating under the guise of IPOB causing mayhem. What you see in the Southeast, it's not really IPOB, I can tell you that.
Isn't it?
No. Their spokespeople, they've come out severally to say this is not us. And these have been the guys speaking for those groups over the years. Okay, so we, if they spoke for IPOB over the years and they're telling us now it's not them, and there's no evidence, I'm not absolving them from it because, hey, they started something and someone else hijacked it for political reasons. So, we're in a mess. But it's not a blame game. It's not a blame thing. People are feeling, like I said, marginalized, disenfranchised. So you look at what they're complaining about and deal with it. It's just as simple as that.
All right. Finally, I think we have the Vox Pops ready. Let's take a quick listen to what Nigerians had to say.
Well, I have nothing to say much about the coming up election because the election is already post already. As in the president is already known. We voting or not voting, the president is already known already. So I think nothing. If I thought there is violence or no violence, the president is already known by them.
For instance, now the Osun State governorship election was a test run. I believe it was a test run, and it really worked out. It helped out, whereby the election wasn't rigged. It wasn't rigged. So it's going to help the people's choice. It's going to help the people's choice to win the election. And I believe in this presidential election, the people's choice really matters. Who you really want really matters. So that is why we are all coming out to vote, because we know, personally, I know the new electoral process really counts. It's really going to work out.
Nigeria election is like a video game. It's like a movie that has been pre-recorded already. So they just come in, talk about the election and do what they want to. Even if we vote for people we want, they end up picking people they want. So I don't think there's anything I want to stress myself on. They should just pick who is right and let God do the will.
This coming election, now what I just see there is that there are people that want to find their way out, like putting some corrupt people there. But we don't want it to be like that. We want it to be a legible person that will be able to do things for the country.
So that was a clip there from Nigeria. There's one particular lady that said that elections has already been decided anyway. And, this goes back to my initial comments about the lack of apathy this election.
Yeah, you see that historically, Nigeria and the voters have always been in that situation. A lot of apathy. You have 94 million registered voters, but in the past, at the end of every election, you may have 35 million voting out of that. So very low voter turnout. But this time around is different. The stakes are much higher. The problems are just far too gross. That people are actually being motivated by hunger, by anger, by frustration to be a part of the process. Usually you go to rallies, you see huge crowds being paid to come out to cheer any candidate that has paid them. But you have one particular candidate and one particular party that fills up every arena and doesn't pay anybody to come, because these guys are really fired up and they cannot wait. I can't wait for 25th of February to come and go, so that this thing can be glaring and obvious to everybody that, hey, finally, it is democracy in Nigeria, what democracy should be: government of the people, for the people, by the people. The common denominator there, the people. And this time around, it will be about the people, and the people will matter. The people are involved in this campaign. Permit me to say this: the stakes are so high, elections are far too serious to be left in the hands of politicians alone. That's why people like me are out. And that's why someone like Peter Obi and Etiaba are in this business, to show Nigerians that we can do better than this. We're better than this.
Do you believe, let me ask you, do you believe that as a leader, you must declare your assets?
Yes, of course. Of course. That's part of transparency. It's even there in the code of conduct. You need to do that anyway. So it's a given. No,
I'm saying this because if you read reports, there has been suggestions that Peter Obi himself has offshore accounts. He's been also documented that he's a wealthy man, but there's been some sort of discrepancies surrounding his wealth, and as such, people are calling, if that's the case, then you must present your assets.
There is absolutely no discrepancy about his assets. Peter Obi has been transparent from 2003 election till today. He has always been a wealthy person. He made money as a young person. Chairman of a bank, even before he became a governor. Chairman of many blue chip companies in Nigeria. But what happened was because he was going into public office, he had to move his assets into a trust. And that's the right thing to do. It was done on public, advice, professional advice. That's what it should be. He wasn't evading anything. If he was doing that, he would have been arrested in this country. He would have been prosecuted. Have you seen anybody, any
on what
authority?
You're saying,
yes.
If you read the reports, it actually went into 2 years into his term as a governor before.
Yeah, there's a process.
In his position.
No, the process was started before he was sworn in, and that process doesn't happen overnight. The most important thing was that it was started. It had to run a course, had to be done legally. He had no business. There was no way he could force it to say it's not up to him.
Because he's been talking about turning Nigeria out of being a country of consumption,
yes,
to a country of production,
yes,
producing. Which, I mean, on a superficial level, it sounds good, right? Because we're all talking about industrialization. But here we are. If you look at the current state of Nigeria right now, one might also argue, you're talking about industrialization, but you've benefited highly from importing goods into the country.
Okay, now will it surprise you that that experience is what is propelling this view? He knows that this system cannot run, this system cannot stand, okay? You have a country so blessed with so many natural resources, and yet we're just extracting them, exporting them, we're not even processing, adding value. Nigeria alone can sustain itself on agriculture. We have vast sort of land. All the conditions are right. We're importing food. That shouldn't happen. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to know that that should be the way to go. China manufactures pretty much everything except human beings. That's why their GDP is as high as it is. That's why their economy is as good as it is. That's why their currency is as stable as it is. Okay? We have no reason not to begin to produce.
Doing a bit of research, and I've said this, people who follow the show have heard me talk about this so many times. We do realize at one particular time in Nigeria, especially the textile industry booming, added significantly to Nigeria's economy. What then tends to happen? You become part of the global economy. Then, of course, liberalization comes in. So if you're pushing for, to become more production on a massive scale, how is this going to work? Because clearly you mentioned China there, and part of the global system, of course, you have to liberalize your tariffs. How is it going to work? We've heard so many campaign messages, industrialization, but the moment they get into office, it doesn't come to fruition.
Yes, because the leaders who are in office lack the political will to drive through this change. Okay, we're part of many treaties. We are going to respect those treaties that we've committed Nigeria to. But nothing stops us from tinkering with our own laws to ensure that our manufacturers are not shortchanged. We're going to tighten so many loopholes. Most of all, a leader that has the strong will to drive through change. He has demonstrated it everywhere he's been, in the private sector, in the public sector. That's what Nigeria will be getting next.
I just want to touch on something real quick, because we just heard the news today, actually, that soon to be the outgoing president, Buhari, signed a deal worth 1.5 billion with China to sort out the seaport in Nigeria. And I'm just wondering, if he's an outgoing president, I know that he's still the president, but shouldn't there be a limit as to how much deals he can sign, seeing as he's coming to the end of his tenure anyway? Do you think?
No. Government is a continuum. It's a continuous process. Even on the morning that he is to hand over, if there's anything that needs his signature there to assent to, he should sign it. It doesn't matter. Nigeria will not end with the departure of President Buhari. A new president will come in and continue from where he stopped, pick up from where the good ones and try and get them better, and the terrible ones or the bad ones will put aside. So nothing stopped. It does nothing stop. He's still the president and still wields a lot of power.
I wish we had more time to talk about the industrialization part of it, because it's something of a real interest of mine, because we see a lot of influx coming into the country, and of course it has a knock-on effect on local produce and local products. Thank you very much for coming in today, Mr. Ben Etiaba. It's been fantastic talking to you. I must mention that this interview was made possible by Ben TV, Iyanga, and also GTV and Channel 7. So
Talk Africa.